are about 40 seconds every single morning where your brain silently negotiates with the alarm clock and, let's be real, usually loses before you're even fully awake. Your eyes open in the dark, and before you can even formulate a single conscious thought, your brain has already run the numbers. It feels the cold floor, it anticipates the long day, it remembers that super difficult project you swore you'd start, and it just makes the decision for you. You hit snooze. You literally just lost a fight you weren't even entirely awake for.
And then, right, by noon, the guilt totally sets in over your latest failed plan, and you inevitably ask yourself that painful question: what is wrong with me? You just assume you lack willpower. You write out a whole new schedule, maybe watch another motivational speech, and, maybe it works for 3 days. But then, you end up right back where you started. Society constantly tells us the answer is simply pushing harder, that we just need more grit, more willpower. But actually, the science paints a vastly different picture.
Here's the big secret society totally gets wrong. Highly disciplined people, they aren't using harsh willpower to force themselves at all, not even close. Instead, they operate on smooth neurological conditioning. The truth nobody really tells you is that highly productive people barely force themselves to do anything. If you're out there white-knuckling your way through life, you're honestly playing the wrong game.
Just consider this 2012 study by psychologists Wilhelm Hoffman and Roy Baumeister. They actually pinged people throughout the day to see what they were resisting. Now, if discipline was really all about willpower, the most disciplined people should have been fighting the hardest, right? But the researchers found the exact opposite. The highly disciplined group wasn't winning the fight against temptation. Remarkably, they were basically never even in the ring. They actually experienced less inner conflict and almost never had to fight their own desires. So how exactly do they do this? Well, it all comes down to a fascinating concept called learned industriousness, which was coined by Robert Eisenberger back in 1992. It essentially proves that the physical sensation of effort can actually be trained to feel rewarding. See, effort isn't just a choice, it's a literal physical sensation in your body, like a heaviness in your chest or a tightness behind your eyes. And because it's a sensation, it can absolutely be conditioned, exactly like a taste or a smell. When effort is repeatedly followed by a reward, the sensation of effort itself stops registering as pain and actually starts signaling that something good is coming.
Michael Inslicht's 2018 paper proved this even further. He showed that humans actively choose hard things, like, say, climbing a mountain, because the effort itself adds immense value. I mean, think about it. Nobody climbs a mountain just for the view. If they did, they'd just take a helicopter. The effort is literally part of the appeal. Liking hard work is a completely documented human capacity. Yours just hasn't been properly switched on yet.
Now, the core neurological mechanism behind all of this is something called dopaminergic prediction. We so often hear dopamine called the reward chemical, but actually, scratch that, that's completely wrong. And correcting this misunderstanding, that is exactly where you gain all your leverage over your own behavior. Let's think of it like a timeline. Back in the 1990s, Wolf Schultz discovered that as a brain learns, the dopamine spike literally travels backwards in time, attaching itself to the visual cue that predicts the prize. He was watching individual dopamine neurons in animals, right? And at first, dopamine fired when the reward arrived. But once the animal learned that a light predicted the reward, the dopamine spiked at the flash of the light, not the reward itself. The neurological signal literally walks backwards in time to whatever reliably predicts the good thing. It's wild.
So, what does this all mean for us? It means your discipline problem is actually a prediction problem. Your brain spikes dopamine for your phone because it expects relief, but it totally flinches at your notebook because it predicts strain and self-criticism. When you pick up your phone, your brain produces a spike before you even unlock it because it predicts a hit. But what does opening your laptop to work reliably predict? For most of us, it predicts feeling behind, stressed, and uncomfortable. Your brain is literally just doing its job by making you flinch away from it.
And unfortunately, our childhoods completely wired us to hate hard work. Think about it. We were only ever rewarded for outcomes, like trophies and good grades. This made the actual effort feel like a miserable tax we just had to pay at the gate. Nobody threw a party for the 3 weeks of ugly, boring studying you did. They only celebrated the A on the report card. So your nervous system learned a very reasonable yet highly destructive lesson. Effort is just the toll you pay, and the reward is entirely separate from the work itself.
Which brings us to the cruelest paradox of all. Every single time you white-knuckle your way through a grueling session and close your laptop feeling awful, you are actively conditioning your nervous system to hate effort even more. When you force yourself through 2 hours of work, slam the laptop shut, and tell yourself, that was awful, I barely got anything done, you're making it worse. The last thing your brain files alongside that effort is self-punishment. You're getting your reps in, sure, but they're reps of the exact wrong thing.
So the solution? You cannot just motivate yourself out of this trap. You absolutely have to change what the act of working predicts. You can't just decide to like discipline any more than you can decide to like a bad smell, right? Motivation is just weather. It comes and goes. The actual goal here is to build a brand new physical association right in your nervous system.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Well, let's dive into 5 scientifically backed steps to trick your brain into actually craving effort. We're going to use everything we just learned about learned industriousness and dopaminergic prediction to totally rebuild how your brain views hard work.
All right, trick number 1. Pay the effort, not the outcome. You must unconditionally reward the act of showing up before you even evaluate your performance. Because results are slow and, let's face it, often totally out of your control, they are terrible teachers. You need to attach the reward directly to the act. The very second you sit at your desk, tick a box. Say out loud, I showed up. I know it feels kind of like rewarding mediocrity to your ego, but remember, we aren't grading performance here. We're pairing the sensation of effort with an immediate reward.
Moving on to trick 2, which is moving the reward to the doorway. There was this brilliant 2014 study that showed gym attendance absolutely skyrocketing when participants were only allowed to listen to gripping audiobooks while working out. Because dopamine migrates backward to the cue, you need to put the good thing right at the entrance of the hard thing. Have a specific premium coffee you only drink at your desk. Have a killer playlist you only listen to when studying. The golden rule here is it must be absolutely exclusive to the hard task.
Trick 3, you have to shrink the entry point. Listen, your brain doesn't actually resist the work itself. It resists the anticipated size of the work. Thinking, oh man, I need to write a whole chapter, immediately triggers that flinch. But thinking, I just need to open the document and write one single sentence doesn't trigger the flinch because there's just nothing there to dread. Make your starting commitment absurdly small, like literally writing just one sentence, until your brain's anticipation of dread totally vanishes.
And by repeating these tiny entries, you build that crucial automaticity. And hey, don't panic if you slip up. A 2010 University College London study tracked habit formation and found that missing a single day won't break your habit curve at all. The only thing that actually breaks the system is quitting entirely. Repetition of that tiny shrunk-down entry point is literally the only currency your nervous system accepts.
Okay, trick 4. Design your room. You need to make environmental decisions while you're calm, so your exhausted late-night self doesn't have to rely on resolve. Leave your phone in a totally different room. Set your clothes out the night before. Remember those highly disciplined people from the Hoffman study we talked about earlier? They weren't fighting off temptation with sheer will. They were actively designing their environments to encounter way fewer temptations in the first place. Making decisions now means your stress-depleted self doesn't have to fight a losing battle later.
Finally, trick 5, and this might honestly be the most powerful trick of the whole bunch. Never end on a failure. You have got to stop ending your work sessions in the wreckage. Don't close the laptop mid-paragraph while spiraling about how little you got done. Deliberately stop on a clean sentence or after one easy, successful set at the gym while it still feels good. You are the one who gets to write the records your brain will consult tomorrow. Your brain files away those last 30 seconds as the ultimate prediction for tomorrow's effort, so make it a win.
If you apply these tricks, the work isn't going to magically become easy, but that agonizing 40-second morning negotiation, that will finally disappear. Anyone who says the work becomes completely effortless is just lying to you. Heavy stays heavy, hard things stay hard, but what vanishes is the internal courtroom drama. The friction of starting goes completely quiet, and effort actually begins to feel like a familiar, rewarding texture.
As the psychologist William James brilliantly pointed out over a century ago, the goal isn't to declare war on yourself, but to make your own nervous system an ally. Long before we could measure dopamine neurons in a lab, he just knew that discipline wasn't about overpowering yourself. It's about getting the automatic, unconscious parts of your brain working on the exact same side as the part of you that wants a better life.
So, I leave you with this to really think about. Which of these 5 brain training tricks is the missing piece in your daily routine? If you've spent years blaming your character for being lazy, just let it go. You were perfectly trained by a flawed system. The absolutely incredible thing about neuroplasticity is that training can always be redone. The only question now is, what is the single, ridiculously small effort you are going to unconditionally reward yourself for today?